What happens when a naive dreamer uncovers her charming new home is a front for organized crime? Buckle up, because every creak might lead to more than just suburban secrets. As I stood in the living room, still clutching that glitzy brochure promising family-friendly parks and tight-knit communities, I heard it again, a hollow thud echoing through the walls of my lovely new abode. Was it the ghost of a disgruntled former owner, haunting me for my poor life choices and naive trust in the flashy smile of our dapper realtor, Frankie Mancini? I envisioned him ensconced in a plush leather chair, his gold cufflinks glinting with malevolence, laughing at my concocted suburban dream. Honestly, who thought making such a significant life decision could revolve around a guy who looked like he just stepped off the set of a low-budget mafia flick? The very thought made my skin crawl. I had dismissed the front porch's fraying welcome mat and the odd stench wafting from the basement as mere quirks of character. Slice of heaven. Indeed, Frankie had snickered, full of confidence, probably because he knew exactly what he was selling. If heaven meant eternal damnation with an added side of the mafia, then sure, sign me up. The walls weren't the only things with secrets that day. I was soon to discover that the neighborhood was teeming with oddities, perhaps even a full-blown crime syndicate. Charging through the kitchen like a professional linebacker, I couldn't help but imagine what colossal mess I had stumbled into. The previous owner must have been some poor sap who'd angered the wrong people. And now we were living in the fallout. I could practically see the headlines. Family moves in, uncovers Mafia Stronghold, neighbors flee in terror. Just when my spiraling thoughts reached a comedic climax, I heard the doorbell chime like an indifferent angel. Standing at the threshold was my neighbor, Olivia Chan, with her fiery red hair and a smirk that said she was ready for whatever chaos this neighborhood had to offer. "You look like you discovered a treasure chest at the bottom of the lake," she quipped, noticing my frantic gesturing as I tried to relay the tale of the creeping dread that had overtaken our charming abode. She was delightful, quirky, and completely unfazed, a vibe that resonated well with my rapidly fraying state of sanity. If anyone could help me unlock the bizarre mysteries that lay within these walls, it was Olivia, an independent journalist with a penchant for digging through layers of half-truths and questionable pasts, much like a curious raccoon hunting for shiny objects at a dump. Sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, surrounded by boxes that felt more like a prison than a new beginning, I laid out my discoveries. "There's something off about this house. I can hear strange noises the basement has. Let's just say it brings a new meaning to unfinished. Not to mention, have you seen how creepy this place looks at night?" I had, in the throes of my overactive imagination, come to picture mobsters donning fedoras and speaking in hushed whispers, just behind that rotting wall. And Olivia? She practically leaned in, her eyes sparkling with that familiar wild energy of curiosity. You know, it wouldn't be the first time a neighborhood was a front for something much seedier. The tension in the air was palpable as the two of us joined forces, fueled by unhinged determination and a shared absurdity. Who needed a mundane suburban paradise when you could live in the bizarre conundrum of organized crime? A plan began to form in my mind. What if I set out to investigate? Unknowingly, I had turned my real estate conundrum into a journalistic quest worthy of the finest tabloids. Think we could catch a mobster red-handed? Maybe score a chat with Frankie? Or at the very least snag a pint of gelato while we're at it? Olivia's laughter rang out, and way to threaded through the chaos, I felt a spark of rebellion I hadn't anticipated. By the time I was ready to dive into this chaotic investigation, armed with nothing but vigor and a notepad I'd find way too many uses for, I had formulated our method. Not only would we fix the house, but also turn it upside down if necessary. No mobster could withstand the might of two determined women with vision. Each creak in the floorboards would serve as our battle cry, our rallying anthem as we chased down the nefarious secrets hidden beneath layers of wallpaper and deceit. I could practically see it unfolding like a cinematic masterpiece. I might even get a solid documentary out of this. Full of vigor, we pressed forward with our plans, determined to confront Frankie Mancini and unveil the truth. Who knew? Perhaps we'd stumble upon a whole clan of myth meant to keep suburban life raw and real while bringing justice back to our newfound haven. Would we triumph or vanish without a trace into this ornate hellhole? Only time would tell after we gassed up on caffeine and formulated our next covert mission. Fueled by caffeine and a manic sense of purpose, Olivia and I transformed from unsuspecting homeowners to unstoppable sleuths overnight. As she rattled off a plan that felt more like a script from an action movie than an actual investigative strategy, My excitement surged, battling the sheer terror of embarking on this unexpected thrill ride. We would document everything, each step of our quest into the depths of suburban darkness. Who would have thought my quiet Saturday would spiral into a potential mobster intervention? My heart raced at the thought of lurking shadows behind our walls. If we're lucky, maybe an actual gelato-throwing mobster will make a grand entrance. What do you think their flavor of choice is? Cannoli chip? I quipped, thinking about all the uncanny scenarios that could potentially lead us into glorious disaster. The first chapter of our plan involved recon, and let me tell you, personality traits we thought were charming suddenly felt like character flaws in the world's worst heist film. We set out armed with a weathered notepad, a camera phone, and a shared flair for graceful inconspicuousness that resembled two hawks on the hunt for lunch. The highlight of our day was a trip to the local coffee shop, where we cleverly plotted to eavesdrop, channeling our inner spy mode as we blended in among the caffeine addicts and bakers. Olivia, with her vivid red hair and eccentric style, practically sparkled while trying to maintain a low profile, a task rendered utterly impossible by the obscene amount of charm she naturally exuded. It didn't help that I started dropping crumbs of sarcasm like breadcrumbs, slowly leading us on our own path to chaos. As we sipped our overly expensive cappuccinos, I trailed off, eyeing a group in the corner who seemed way too interested in their conversations, too circumspect on whether the barista was in earshot. "Look over there," I whispered, nodding toward the suited men turned mobsters across the room. I mean, could they possibly be wearing their sunglasses indoors with more drama? Is this a neighborhood coffee shop or an audition for a crime noir film? Olivia giggled, her brightness in contrast to the gray, drab coffee shop ambience, and I could see the gears in her head turning, plotting our next move with all the charm and sanity reserved for actual detectives. Maybe they're discussing the best methods for getting rid of unwanted tenants. She shot back, her eyebrows waggling in pure mischievousness. Less a coffee shop and more a mafia convention. It was ludicrous. We rushed through our drinks and finalized our not-so-stealthy mission of visiting Frankie Mancini. Dropping by the place where he invariably conspired against good taste and reputable realty felt like our hostile takeover of his deceptive empire. His office sat on the corner of Maple and Chaos, exclusively handcrafted to entice the gullible homebuyer, with signage that read, "The home of your dreams," glowing like a neon lie in the midday sun. I could almost hear Frankie's voice in the back of my mind, charmingly selling me on purchasing what was definitely a splendidly sinister place to hide from the law. "Ready for round two with our charming friend?" I asked, puffing my chest out as I tried to dispel the butterflies that had decided to throw a rave in my stomach. The look Olivia gave me was that of sheer determination, mixed with spontaneous inspiration, an exhilarating cocktail of friendship and audacity. Our strategy hinged not only on casual conversation, but also on strategically timed interruptions, results-oriented banter laced with inquiries about the previous owner and any little mob dramas. Olivia, exuding a bold confidence I admired, prepared to dazzle Frankie with her insightful questions, while I positioned myself to ambush with my innocent banter about garden vegetables and local parks. Because what can be more disarming than discussing heirloom tomatoes in the midst of a mobster's lair? If he could sell me a house that transformed into a hideout, surely he wouldn't mind discussing my kale-growing abilities. Our shenanigans hung in the air like a promise. The blend of adrenaline and potential unearthings pushed us towards something thrilling, whether that brought fortune or chaos. Frankie, stepping out through large glass doors with an air of practiced nonchalance, greeted us with that too broad grin, incongruous with what I now suspected to be his rather unsavory business. "Ladies," he beamed, all flashy suit and gleaming confidence, "what can I do for you today? Looking for a cozy nook to chat?" Dubiously, I stared at him, noting how he did maintain the ambiance of a used car salesman who could charm your socks off while selling you a lemon. Olivia and I exchanged glances, our internal mastermind alliance solidified by the absurdity of this whole charade. "Actually, we were just curious about the previous owners of our lovely abode," she sweetly began, her voice honeyed and deceptively innocent. "You know, the family guy who lived there before?" The ensuing silence from Frankie filled the space like a lead balloon, making my heart race in dreadful anticipation. The tension was like a taut spring, ready to snap at any moment. Would this guy crack? Surely not. It was imperative to keep the air light lest we accidentally reveal our hilarious yet relentless intent to expose him. "I hear the last owner made a few trades, like withholding any mafia acknowledgments in the real estate listing." I winked, throwing in a cheap shot just as my humor went straight for the jugular. Olivia leaned in, feigning intrigue, her eyes sharp like a hawk's. There it was. The foreboding atmosphere thickened, and somewhere in the distance, I could almost hear the triumphant clanging of what I'm pretty sure were karmic scales tipping go after so many poorly dealt hands. Would our sneak attack turn into outright chaos? Or would we finally dig deep enough to catch this slippery crook in his own web of deception? The mystery thickened as we hung on the precipice of glorious chaos, knowing our suburban lives would never be the same again. The silence hung heavy like a bad mixtape played on repeat, and I couldn't help but squirm in that surefire awkwardness that accompanies all encounters with ethically questionable real estate agents. No offense to any good ones out there. Frankie blinked, his smirk faltering for the barest fraction of a second. Was that a sign of discomfort? Or had he finally realized that swooping two naive housewives were in fact gunning for him? Our calculated inquiry cut through the tension like scissors through a thin sheet of wrapping paper, but we were no present to be unwrapped. Oh no, we were the reckless kids holding an exploding party popper, and Frankie looked like he was about to get blasted. What do you mean, mafia acknowledgments? He spat, feigning ignorance like a master thespian in an off-Broadway disaster. My heart raced, a pelican caught in a hurricane, because we were tiptoeing into explosive territory, but the bravado simmering down my spine urged me to push for just a little more. Olivia leaned in closer, her eyes twinkling with daring mischief, and an eagerness I couldn't help but admire. Who knew journalism could create such warriors of interest? "Oh, Frankie," she cooed sweetly. The mock innocence dripped from her voice as though we were discussing cookie recipes at Grandma's. "Surely you remember the delightful gentleman who owned our lovely home before us? The one rumored to have a vibrant social network." My stomach twisted delightfully at the words, vibrant social network, as if we were talking about a local amateur gardening club rather than underworld dealings that could send us running for the hills. The man's facade of charm slipped again, his carefully curated expression skimming dangerously close to that of a deer caught in headlights, and the realization dawned on me. This man had secrets. Oh, juicy secrets. Did it get juicy enough for a crime drama? I was living for that wild ride. Frankie's nervousness transformed almost instantly into a whirlpool of bravado, the sheer absurdity of his backpedaling theatrics almost enough to draw a sympathetic nod from me. Almost. "Listen, ladies," he crooned, resurrecting that charming smile that launched 1,000 listings. "I assure you, it's all just rumors." The way he pronounced rumors bore too much gravity, like he thought he could weight the words down with enough fake sincerity to bury the truth. My internal volcano threatened to erupt with laughter and rage all at once. He stood there with his ridiculously ostentatious suit, peddling flimsy excuses like they were prime rib, while casually trying to sweep his shady past under the rug. An act that was by far more comical than convincing, and yet, somehow, I sensed despair lurking beneath his flashy surface. Maybe, just maybe, this was our chance to unleash the real narrative now. Carpets, to be clear, only work as disguises until you lift them, an age-old lesson I was eager to share. "Rumors, huh?" I said, feigning nonchalance while inwardly fuming, building momentum like a rolling ball of indignation. "Rumors? I mean, isn't that what they say just before the police file a missing persons report? Come on, Frankie, let us in on this Little Italy after-hours club you've got going on. We want to dive deep into what makes this neighborhood so family-friendly. I'm sure the residents would appreciate a good food story to chew on." The wicked thrill of confronting him electrified my veins. Each word pushed me closer and closer to the breakdown of his fortifications. I felt emboldened, daring to see how many verbal punches could land before he'd swing back, and how delicious that slice of revenge would taste. Olivia shot me an approving look, clearly reveling in her role as a partner in crime, who might as well have adventurous journalist printed across her forehead. The glimmer of fury sparked in Frankie's eyes, revealing the wolf behind the well-tailored facade. "How dare you?" he began, his words like the growl of a lion, the gleam of animosity flickering beneath that polished exterior. But before he could make a thorough villain of himself, I struck like a lightning bolt. "Oh, please, Frankie." I waved my hand dismissively, waving away his staged bravado as if it were a pesky summer fly. "What's life without a little drama? I mean, come now. I should thank you for giving us this surreal comedy straight out of a screenplay. If we were focused on family-friendly homes, I never would have found someone quite captivating. We just wanted a backyard BBQ, and you set us up to host a mafia reunion?" My voice rose ever so slightly at the last word, as if by sheer force, I could throw him off balance and snatch a glimpse of his true identity. That would have been quite the entertainment for the kids, wouldn't it? Frankie couldn't contain it anymore. The glare metamorphosed into an outright explosion of incredulous laughter. As though my clumsy remarks had tapped into a vein of absurdity, he could not resist. Look, ladies, this neighborhood might be a perfect front, but I suggest you rethink your inquisitive little escapade. His feigned friendliness crumbled, revealing more of that mafia sheen underneath. Suddenly, I felt an electrifying rush course through me. We were flirting with danger, tapping into his rage, and relishing every agitated second. Frankie thought he could wave us off like afterthoughts. No way was that happening on my watch. I whispered to Olivia, I can smell the desperation. We're cutting deeper, right? With her unwavering support, I knew we could charm out the truths that lingered like smoke in the night. Needless to say, a fast-paced exchange followed, laced with half-truths and dogged determination as I danced along the precipice of disaster. Watching Frankie squirm made me feel like a cat playing with its food. But I wasn't done yet. Each half-hearted denial only fueled my desire for the full picture, and I watched as his charismatic charm turned sour. Would we finally corner this slippery salesman turned mobster? Or would we find ourselves dodging bullets in this suburban saga? With our determination hardening with every snappy retort, the possibility of chaotic glory loomed on the horizon, and for once, my heart craved the rush. What could unravel next? Would we face the shadows, fighting back with every laugh and quip? Or would we accidentally unleash a mobster's fury? The answers lay in the dance of audacious confrontation. And boy, were we in for a thrill. The air crackled with tension, electrifying every moment as I stood there practically daring Frankie to unleash that inner mobster. I was convinced he was hiding under those designer duds. You know the type, someone who wears a suit that screams, I tie my ties a little too tight because love isn't enough. I was now half exhilarated and half terrified, imagining my life spiraling downhill into a whirlwind of organized crime with decorations from The Sopranos stuck all over my walls. What do you mean rethink? I shot back, incredulity oozing from every pore. You're the one who sold us this house like it was some Pinterest project, all the while knowing it was perfect for a clandestine pasta joint. Are you telling me you've dropped us into the middle of a mob sitcom? Someone cue the laughter track. My voice hit that perfect pitch where I was borderline screeching, fueled by coffee-fueled certitude and the raw thrill of the confrontation. Frankie's facade cracked, and in that moment, his smirk morphed into something resembling rage, tinted with true fear. Of course, what can you expect from a man who thought he could sell a property to two unsuspecting women while hiding all the dramatic subplots? Listen, ladies, you have completely misunderstood, he exclaimed, waving his hands dismissively as if trying to forcibly shove our suspicions back into the flammable realm of imagination. This neighborhood is safe. I don't know how those horrible rumors got started, but I assure you it's just... I interrupted, because frankly, who gives a fig about his fragile insincerity? Just what, Frankie? A misunderstanding? Like your definition of family-friendly? My heart raced with glee at my own audacity, propelling me deeper into this thrilling power struggle, defiantly brandishing my sarcasm like a literary sword ready to slice through the nonsense. Olivia's laughter mingled so flirtatiously with my verbal maneuvers that the air buzzed with a brand new concoction of chaos. Family-friendly, huh? Are we talking about hand-knitted sweaters? Or murder mysteries? She quipped, her eyes sparkling with mischief. I couldn't help but admire her. This feisty femme fatale with a heart of gold wasn't shy about poking the proverbial bear. Frankie's insistent backpedaling had him teetering like a toddler on a tricycle, grasping for balance but inevitably wobbling out of control. Murder mysteries will turn into real mysteries if you don't stop it right now, he rumbled, though it was hard to find any authority in those words, when his voice was a precarious mix of irritation and barely contained panic. I glanced at Olivia, and together we briefly shared a glance of shared delight in the absurdity of this situation. Oh, the delicious flavor of karma was wafting through the air, and I felt equally merciless and gleeful. With adrenaline spiking through my veins, I took a step closer, distilling the palpable tension by letting my inquisitiveness creep towards an emotional zenith. Come on, Frankie. We look like the perfect family, and this house cubes conveniently as both a cozy nest for snuggles or a secret lair for clandestine meetings. What's more family-friendly than spaghetti and negotiations, right? I challenged boldly, my smirk radiating mischief. It felt unbelievably satisfying, every word hitting home like synchronized swimmers tumbling through the air toward a depth of pure chaos. The moment you capture a villain's vulnerability is like discovering the last creme brulee in the fridge. Absolutely heavenly. Through gritted teeth, he let out a low chortle of frustration that only made me feel stronger in this surreal verbal duel. With the party lights dimmed and the stakes rising, I pressed further, knowing this encounter could only lead to either our victory or our descent into utter madness. So, Frankie, just how far does this web of connections go? What are you, a glorified broker or the grand poobah of mobsters? Admit it, you're just one bad haircut away from being the next kingpin. Watching his face burn crimson, the furious laughter of my inner voice filled my ears as I silently marveled at my own chutzpah. Or maybe you're just part of some elaborate quest to find the real estate Wizard of Oz, where the exit is buried beneath a pile of questionable contracts and missing persons. I practically growled through my widened grin, daring him to fire back. This was where the thrill of such absurdity lingered, simmering with uncertainty, yet brimming full of fresh possibilities. Just then, a flicker of understanding danced across Frankie's sharply suited frame, and I could have sworn I was locking eyes with a cornered rat. Incredulity compounded into a hysteria that felt inches from exploding. "You two really don't understand what you're getting into," he finally launched back, his charm dissipating with every syllable, morphing him into a caricature of a beleaguered clown, trying to juggle while standing on a tightrope. "There are secrets, and if they find out you're prying into things that don't concern you, it will." As the words hung precariously, draping over us like an unkempt shroud, I raised an eyebrow, copying the same nonchalant posture I'd seen in those snappy crime shows. Was it a death threat or just another episodes of Frankie in the limelight? But my wit came rushing in, battling back the tense constructs that threatened to cage me in doubt. "Oh, sweetheart, if I'm honest with myself, secrets are basically my middle name at this point. You're sounding a little too mafia-esque for someone selling family-friendly houses." A cloud of righteousness swirled around me, propelling me like a jet engine as I staked my claim as both investigator and unwilling participant in this neighborhood pandemonium. Did someone say front? Because if you're not careful, I'm about to expose you and your shiny persona to the entire neighborhood. Igniting the flames of rebuke, I leaned in closer, enabling my boldness to overshadow even the gloomiest thoughts of potential consequences. Would my reckless abandon lead us right into the fiery jaws of trouble, or would we dance our way to liberating justice? It was a cliffhanger and a half, and we were only warming up. I could practically hear the gears grinding in Frankie's mind as I watched his bravado start to slip like my ex-boyfriend's promises. He stood there, blustered and bewildered, like a lion who had just discovered he'd been roaring at a wall full of mirrors. That irritated smirk was replaced with strained confusion as he sputtered something in the direction of the right people to speak to. "Oh, Frankie, you sly snake. But when you tango with the likes of me, it tends to end in a showdown reminiscent of a spaghetti western. Gloves off and wit out in the open." A part of me couldn't help but snicker at the sheer absurdity of the situation, while the other part, a much louder and more determined part, was preparing to drag every hidden skeleton regarding this so-called family-friendly place into the glaring sunlight of justice. "Look at you, local don of homemade lasagna, trying to intimidate two women who probably binge on crime documentaries more than actual crime," Olivia chimed in, her voice practically dripping with sarcasm. She leaned against the door frame like some kind of modern-day Joan of Arc, ready to charge into battle, and it was a sight to behold. My heart swelled with gratitude. Here was this fierce fireball of a woman, completely uncovering the humor and chaos while I fumbled with my own wild emotion. What was about to unfold was less about us, mere mortals stuck in a real estate nightmare, and more about the life lessons Frankie apparently forgot to read through his colored rose-tinted glasses. We were about to clap back against this self-appointed king of convoluted connections, exposing his web of deceit that was just screaming for a good old-fashioned unraveling. "It's just a misunderstanding, I swear. It's just a small business. An Italian restaurant?" he blurted, rapidly waving his hands like a children's class on show and tell, while attempting to guide our perception. I could swear I saw some pepperoni heart melt in his gaze. Talk about over-promising your product. At that moment, fire ignited within Olivia. "Oh, don't sell us that calamari," she flared, her hands flying up in disbelief. "We aren't licking sauce off our fingers while picking out china for special family dinners. Are the dishes moving, or are you?" She had us both rolling with laughter at the sheer absurdity of his many excuses. If he was going to spin a yarn this compelling, he might as well go for a Netflix deal while he was at it. As Frankie squirmed under the weight of our ridicule, it dawned on me that I was inadvertently holding the stage. This had spiraled far beyond a simple home dispute. It was a twisted duel of wits. My mind raced with all the details I had meticulously researched. Texts, emails, and neighborhood rumors swirled like seductive fireflies around me, begging to be declared out loud. Didn't you mention something about homes with character, Frankie? Because this neighborhood sounds less like Mayberry and more like The Godfather. How many hidden cameras and get-rich-quick schemes does it take to sell one house? I declared. It was an incredible rush, standing there, watching the life bleed out of Frankie's charisma, leaving behind a disillusioned wannabe mob boss desperately trying to spin misfit concepts into gold. Riding the crest of triumph, I could see Olivia's eyes twinkling with the thrill of the verbal duel. Next, you'll tell us all about Aunt Edna's homemade cannoli, huh? She hurled back, a laugh brewing beneath her words. Are they the ones doing all the dirty work, while you stand on the corner selling property like it's toothpaste? What is this? The great cookie caper? You can't dismiss that what lies beneath could lead to global domination with an Italian twist. With that, both our eyes locked, and the world around us started to inch closer, as if we were magnetically tethered to each other's fervor. It was a bizarre bonding moment amidst the chaos, solidified in our shared determination to unveil this spinning top of half-truths and deceit. Frankie, now close to apoplectic, rumbled with indignation. You have no idea what business is like out here. Riled up, he swung around as if to stage exit on command. I'm not answering questions for two amateurs who think they know the first thing about this life. But it was a facade crumbling around an imposter prince tossed into the ring far over his head. Oh, how deliciously poetic. What was it that the youth said nowadays? Epic fail? Or perhaps karma had sharpened her claws and had been itching to unleash her fury upon him ever since he orchestrated our ill-fated leap into neighborhood longevity, not unlike how paper finds itself flapped around a potted cactus. The atmosphere buzzed with electric tension, our rebellious laughter rippling through the air as realization dawned that we had outmaneuvered Frankie. Every word stewed in his seasoned mind transformed into chaotic clouds, swirling around like a tornado. Amidst the seething uncertainty on his face, I leaned forward, savoring this moment of pure vindication. So, are you going to give me back my deposit and apologize? Or do we need to enlist Olivia's journalistic sleuthing skills to dig deeper? I concluded, my heart racing with the exhilarating prospect of a righteous upheaval. Unbeknownst to him, the shadows lining his reality were about to be cast long and wide, not just by Olivia's pen, but also by my hopeful heart living between the realms of vengeance and forgiveness. The road to justice was paved with a chaotic synergy. Now, was the world ready for our next steps? With the smoke of verbal combat still curling in the air, my heart thrummed in a wild dance of triumph and indignation. Frankie Mancini, the once confident purveyor of deception, was reduced to a spluttering caricature of himself. The shift in momentum felt electric, like the sweet taste of dessert after a strict diet. Did you see his face? I whispered to Olivia, grinning like the Cheshire cat, her laughter blending harmoniously with mine. It's like he took a dip in a pool of icy water and forgot how to swim. I had undoubtedly stumbled upon a peculiar cocktail where our petty grievances twisted seamlessly into larger narratives that would hopefully end with his imminent downfall. But oh, the twists in this tale were far from over. As Frankie lumbered away, spitting out obscenities and promises of retribution, I turned to Olivia, my voice thick with excitement. What's next? I asked, my eyes shining brighter than the Milky Way. Should we gather the neighbors and hold an old-fashioned town hall meeting? Maybe we can go full-on pitchfork in hand? I chuckled, envisioning a gathering of disgruntled homeowners glaring down on Frankie from makeshift podiums built from milk crates. In my mind, we were forging not just community, but a revolution. Real estate aristocracy, caustic landlords, and mafia subplots be damned. We were going to reclaim our sanctuary. Not yet, but I have an idea. Olivia declared with the confidence of a seasoned chess master who had just revealed her grand plan. You know that local park where the children play? The one filled with dandelions and mildly aggressive squirrels? I nodded, squinting my eyes as if that would reveal some hidden magic. Let's organize a neighborhood picnic, bring the entire tribe together with tasty treats and lemonade while smoothing over any lingering tensions. And then, we let Frankie attend. Her eyes sparkled with mischief as she recalled the sparring match just concluded. Imagine the spectacle. Everyone mingling casually while your lion's share of drama unfolds right in the heart of where he thought he could rule with impunity. It was brilliant. The kind of whimsy that dripped with patriotic fervor, like 4th of July fireworks lighting up an overcast sky. We spent the next few days brewing our plan over lattes and late-night snack sessions, phone calls ricocheting between Olivia's trusty iPhone and my dilapidated flip phone. Each enthusiastic conversation seemed to morph into a brainstorming frenzy as we distributed assignments for the picnic like free samples at Costco. Neighbors were assigned pinwheel-making duties, while others prepared vintage tablecloths begging for a moment in the sun. It was a meticulous task that felt less like preparation and more like an elaborate heist. Yes, we were pulling off the heist of reclaiming our neighborhood from the clutches of Frankie Mancini. Once again, I felt a zestful wave of determination crashing over me, washing away any remnants of doubt. Soon enough, the day of the picnic dawned with the kind of bright blue sky that made you sigh in contentment. Children squealed with delight as they sprinted across the playground. Sunlight glinted off the picnic baskets, like twinkling stars. I stood back for a moment, observing the living, breathing testament to our cooperative spirit wrapped neatly in a quilt of community love and support. But then, just as the warm feelings began to wrap around me like a cozy blanket, whom should I spot emerging from the shadows like a bad theme park villain? Frankie. His brows were knit together like the tightly woven strands of a fraying rope that was about to snap. He sauntered toward us, hands casually draped in the pockets of an all-too-expensive coat. "Nice turnout, ladies," he grumbled, his tone weighted down by disdain. "What is this? A glorified bake sale?" But oh, how glorious our bake sale was. I felt each petty jab against me bounce off like bullets against an armored vest. It all sent ripples of glee bouncing through me. "Actually, Frankie," I chirped, tightening the grip around my lemonade, "we're having a quaint little powwow for community bonding. I thought you'd appreciate the chance to connect with the lovely people you've tried to swindle." The words practically dripped from my lips with a delightful taunt. Oh yes, served him this dish cold. Olivia stepped beside me, casually balancing a tray of fish-shaped crackers while sporting a grin reminiscent of a cat who just caught itself a particularly lazy mouse. Frankie opened his mouth. A barrage of retorts cued like a bad 80s action movie villain. But then an odd moment transpired. An elderly neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, bless her soul, wandered right up to him with the unrestrained curiosity of a toddler dressed in Sunday best. "Oh, Frankie dear, you should try my famous red velvet cupcakes. They have this syrupy marshmallow frosting that'd knock your gold cufflinks right off." The rest of us waded through nervous giggles as Frankie sputtered, attempting to pass off the awkward encounter with grand hand gestures that betrayed his need for escapism. It seemed the universe had spoken, delivering a delicious slice of karma that was almost too good to be true. As Frankie stood there, wading through hot cupcakes and slightly confused children, I kept my internal scoreboard, a score that could only lead to victory. Action suits him poorly. He hadn't counted on the sheer determination of a community turned vigilant. Would this power struggle end today? Or would it become the battle cry to rip apart the increasingly frayed threads of the Mafia's grip on our world? Just then, as the scent of baked goods filled the air, I realized the stakes were so much greater than real estate. Frankie and his bravado were about to confront the very forces he had underestimated in our quaint little neighborhood. How was his plan to keep our family-friendly homes under wraps now going to deal with the warm camaraderie and courage of the neighbors in the sunlit park? The stage was set, the curtain was rising, and just like that, it was showtime. Were we ready to unleash our full might with laughter, camaraderie, love, and a side of community justice? This was only the beginning, and as the shadows of the past began to fade under the blazing sun, I couldn't help but feel the tide shifting. Frankie's time was ticking. He just didn't know it yet. The tension hung in the air thicker than Mrs. Henderson's syrupy marshmallow frosting, and I could feel it vibrating through the gathering of neighbors as they subtly exchanged glances, all eager to witness Frankie's impending humiliation. He stood there, jaw clenched and ghostly pale as Mrs. Henderson ambushed him with baked goods. And oh, how the universe seemed to conspire against him. I could practically hear the sound effect of a record scratching, cutting through the almost electric atmosphere. As Mrs. Henderson chewed on the soft red velvet cupcake with zeal while eyeing Frankie like he was a particularly interesting bug, my inner monologue cheered. because serving him the bitter taste of community spirit with a generous side helping of baked goods felt like the ultimate power play. "Organic muffins, anybody?" I exclaimed, gesturing dramatically to the picnic table that resembled a bakery explosion. "Brought straight from our neighbor's secret stash. Or maybe just from your corner shop, Frankie," I added with a wicked smirk, knowing full well that behind the bravado lay nothing but a hollow man. As the warm rays of the afternoon sun transformed a competitive tableau into something rather festive, I noticed Olivia doing her best to rally the troops, her eyes darting with delight as she prepared the next layer of chaos. "You know," she chimed in, "Frankie might enjoy a lovely game of charades later, like a good old-fashioned public execution of his dignity." The momentum was building like a cartoon train racing down an endless track, and the neighbors started buzzing with excitement. Huddled in clusters around the food, laughter rose like a chorus, a transformation of resentment into pure revelry. "Who knew real estate scamming could be such a charming entanglement?" I whispered conspiratorially to Olivia, while giggling at the absurdity of our own rallying cries turning into shenanigans. The sheer delight as we turned the weight of negativity into a quirky festival made my heart race wildly. This felt more satisfying than biting into a double fudge brownie after a diet. But of course, it wouldn't be Franklin Mancini if he didn't attempt some desperate last-ditch effort to regain control. As if zapped with an invigorating dose of audacity, he finally straightened his back, threw his shoulders back, and sauntered toward the crowd like a cocky college football star who missed the memo about this being a neighborhood chill fest and not the Super Bowl. "All right, enough of this nonsense," he proclaimed, his voice dripping with feigned authority. "I understand you think you can parlay your attempt at community into some sort of meditative rite. But let's be real, this is just a diversion from your mundane existence." Groans erupted from the crowd, and I almost laughed out loud. Did he truly think that belittling our efforts was going to siphon our joy? To add insult to injury, just as his vitriol began to tumble out, Mrs. Henderson, bless her darling heart, swiftly brandished another cupcake in his direction. "You're just bitter because no one quite dazzles like these cupcakes, Frankie. Try one." A chorus of cheers erupted around her as she held her baking weapon like a trophy. The gallant beauty of karma was on full display, forcing Frankie to either capitulate to the absurdity of our community or go down like the villain we all knew him to be. "You know, Frankie," I called, my voice light and friendly, taunting him like that annoying fly buzzing around a stubborn facade. "There is something poetic about this get-together. It's like you're the clown and we're the carnival. You're the punchline to our joyous existence." Not so subtle gasps echoed, and I could swear I saw his jaw tighten, like he was preparing for war. A war I was thoroughly convinced we would win. After what felt like ages of Frankie once more sputtering his way through threats and tasteless barbs, I turned my back conspiratorially to the gaggle of neighbors and leaned into Olivia's ear. "We've lured him into our lab of creativity, and now it's time to let the proverbial spark fly," I whispered, and Olivia erupted with laughter, while nudging me toward the impromptu stage we had set with picnic baskets and an assortment of DIY decorations befitting a feathery circus. With a flick of my wrist, I motioned to the group to quiet down, and together we began chanting a garbled rendition of the cupcake anthem. And yes, shockingly, it was as melodious as a chorus of off-key frogs. Frankie's eyes widened. Little did he know we were turning the picnic into a melodrama never before witnessed in our sleepy neighborhood. The crescendo built, laughter crescendoed, and hand claps infused life into our makeshift entertainment as Frankie finally began unraveling right before our eyes. The accidental stonewall of his previous bravado cracked as he sputtered indignantly, "You think this circus here can intimidate me?" But the truth was that we were no longer intimidated. We were the tribe united, seizing control of our narrative. And suddenly, Frankie was nothing more than a poorly orchestrated punchline, his flickering threats resembling nothing more than a rabid squirrel clamoring for attention in our park. The energy fueled itself, a whirlwind of increasingly spontaneous antics. It was evident the people cherished the simple act of reclaiming joy. As the spectacle reached its zenith, I spied a news van pulling up, those satirical lenses framing our comedic display. Whispers of outrage began circulating amongst the neighbors, and I could see the realization dawned in Frankie's eyes. Perhaps being surrounded by infectious spirits was not what he had envisioned when he slagged his tenure in this community. Frankie's swagger faltered as he turned to escape, but it was too late. Our laughter and camaraderie had become the new anthem. Desperation triggered a comical meltdown as he retreated in a huff, pursued by a brigade of cupcakes graciously lobbed by Mrs. Henderson and a sprinkling of hostile laughter. Who knew the battle for autonomy would culminate in such an irresistible show of unity? How could I have ever doubted this merry band of misfits? My heart swelled with pride as the realization sunk in. The parade of community cohesion stampeded across our park, shattering the chains of past grievances, and reminding me that we stood as more than just individual families. We were a vibrant family, one that would not let deceit tarnish our spirit. At that moment, as I watched the panic engulf Frankie and the laughter of our block spiraled up into the sunny skies, I couldn't help but wonder if we should throw an annual scam-a-palooza. The sun shone brighter, glittering on the chaos we had embraced, our fervor etched into the tale of neighborhood resilience. Victory was sweet, and today felt like a delicious epilogue in the ongoing story of who we were and who we would undoubtedly become.